Hi and welcome to this demonstration of Author-It. Author-It is an end-to-end component content management system where all of your users can work together to create, manage and deliver component-based content. Whether you're technical writers or non-technical contributors, subject matter experts, trainers or learning developers, you can all work together in a single system to create component-based content that is then managed centrally. You can reuse and repurpose that content across your documents, manage translation and localization, and have secure content delivered to print, web, and help-based formats, whether on mobile or desktop devices. Some of these amazing formats include SCORM interactive e-learning courses, adaptive responsive web-based help outputs, support sites, traditional PDF, product manuals, and much, much more. So sit back, relax, while we take you through this demo of Author-It. When you first log into Author-It, you'll land on the Author-It portal. From here, you can launch all of the various modules that make up the Author-It system. Today, what we're going to be showing you is how to import your content. We're going to then create some additional content as well as reuse content that's already in the library and show you the various kinds of reuse that's possible in Author-It. We're going to look at reviewing that document and show you the power of doing collaborative interactive reviews. Then we'll go through a quick look at the translation localization process and also look at some of the published outputs. So let's get started by looking at importing. Importing is super important because you're going to want to take your document and break it up into components so that you can actually use those components and store them separately. To do that, we're going to use the author module. So I'm going to open that now. The author module is the primary module used by writers. On the left-hand pane here, you will see a folder structure containing all of your content components. So here we are in teleportation devices folder, and here are all of the components related to that. You can organize your library in a similar way to the way you would organize content on your hard drive, except that this is not on a hard drive. All of this content is stored in a database where you can reuse any of the content with any document. So to start off with, we're going to do an import. I'm going to switch over to our import tab here, and we're going to start by importing a Word document. Word documents are typical ways that people have created documents. Author-It can also import from a variety of different formats, including RTF or any format you can get into RTF, FrameMaker documents, legacy help formats like WinHelp, Windows Help Projects, HTML Help or RoboHelp projects, HTML, and we can also import from a variety of XML formats, including formats like Ditter. So let's get started with a Word document. Now, the first step of the import wizard is to break the Word document up and to analyze it to determine how it is laid out. Typically, people will try to organize it by using styles as the main dividers between sections or topics. So the import wizard's automatically identified these, and it's automatically mapped heading 1, 2, and 3 to level 1, 2, and 3 topics. And we have a variety of rules in the background which are pre-set up with this importer that will automatically do that for you. Of course, you can modify those rules to better suit your document. In the next step, it's identified the remainder of the styles and it's mapped those across to how we're going to style them or tag them inside Author-It. By default, the rules have mapped them all across. We can choose to make some adjustments here if we wish, or we can just accept the defaults. The next step is Author-It will go through the document and create a preview. And this is a preview of the document as it stands at the moment and how Author-It is going to break it up. As you can see, all of the mapping is brought across for your bullets, tables, there's numbering, images, and if you do identify something that you know has been missed, and I'll show you an example, I'm going to take the mapped formatting off and put it back to the original. And I can see here that this is not being picked up, so I can easily customize the import rules by simply creating a new rule for the formatting found at this location and then map that across to a character level element or style inside Author-It. Okay. So once Author-It's created that particular rule, I can now turn the mapping back on. You'll see that it's picked it up and it will pick it up for everything else. Next, all we do is click Next, and you'll see now Author-It is bringing in all of the various components, images, index entries, cross-references, hyperlinks, topics, everything that is in that document. And there it is, and it's complete. So now we have a document brought in from Word, ready for us to start working on it. Next, we're going to take a look at reuse. Now, reuse is the primary reason that people move to component-based authoring. It's so that you can take a piece of content, which is typically locked up inside a document, and be able to reuse that across a number of documents. Now, Authorit supports reuse at a number of different levels of granularity. So we're going to start looking at this reuse with the least granular and then move to the most granular. The first level we're going to look at is called a book. Now, a book contains a collection of topics, so think of it as a binder. This is an example of a book, what we've imported, but a book can also be a section. It can have any number of things. So we actually want to reuse a section, which is the introduction to our book. So I'm going to pop across to my search. In my search, I'm just going to go and look for this introduction section. And here it is. When I double click that, you can see that it's actually its own separate book, very similar to the one we had, but it's got this collection of topics. Now, while I could take these topics here and simply add them to my other book by reusing them, the problem is if I wanted to always be able to use them together as a collection, that is, maybe I want to add to or remove from this collection over time, by reusing the book itself, it means that I always get those changes. So that's what I want to do. I'm going to go ahead and reuse the book itself, and I do that by simply dragging and dropping the book into the contents of the book I've got, and I'm just going to pop that in after my table of contents. So there is my introduction section, and I've reused that book inside a book. The next level of reuse we're going to take a look at is topic level reuse, and just the way it sounds, it's reusing of individual topics. So for this example, I'm also going to use the search, and I'm going to search for a disclaimer notice that I have got in my database, and it very quickly brings back the results. Now what I want to do is just preview that before I add it to my book, just to make sure. So I've minimized my book, and now I'm just going to have a look at each one of these in turn and decide which one I want to include. Yep, it's the top one. Just quickly restore my book. Then a simple drag and drop exercise allows me to pop that just below my copyright notice, and now I've reused that disclaimer. So one of the most important things about reusing content is you've got to know where you've reused things. And this can become really complicated. In the file system, you can use an image in your document, but the file system is completely unaware that you've done that. So it's really easy for people to break things inadvertently by going into the file system and deleting things that have been reused. Authorit tracks all of this reuse automatically. And if we look at the relationships of this disclaimer notice, it is now aware that it's being used by these two books. Now, because it's got that relationship tracked in a database, if someone comes along and inadvertently tries to delete that disclaimer notice, Authorit knows that it's being used, and it will actually prevent them from being able to delete that, and it will even tell them exactly where that's reused. So that's one of the real advantages of having all of your content stored in a database rather than in individual files. So next we're going to take a look at even more granular reuse. We're going to take a look at using content, or using topics in this case, inside other topics. Sometimes this is also referred to as a conred. I've got a procedure over here which is talking about setting my home coordinates, and I've got a couple of steps that I like to reuse across procedures because they're common. In order to help me find the content that I'm after, I'm actually going to use another search facility in Authorit called the quick search. So I'm going to look for accept, and here is the topic that I'm after. It's called accept reject. I'm just going to open that up, and then we'll have a look at that. Now the accept reject, as I said, is a couple of different steps which, when they're by themselves, they come across as just step 1 and 2. But when we want them to appear inside our other steps, of course it's going to have to adjust itself to the numbering that's already there. So let's go ahead and reuse that, and you do again by a simple drag and drop. We're going to pop that inside the other one, and we have a number of choices here. In this case, we're going to do what's called embed the topic, and you'll notice that it's popped itself in context with the other numbers, and the numbering has adjusted itself. Now it's also highlighted in the gray color, and that indicates to me that it's not actually part of this topic, but it's actually another topic. I can double click that gray area and open that up in the editor by itself, and you'll actually notice that in this one, we've also got some other gray areas here, and that's because those are actually individually reused as well. Now, why would you want to get down to this level of granularity? Well, think about it in terms of, let's say you're documenting a user interface. You may want to have these reusable components to represent the text labels, and that will ensure that they're consistently used across your document, but also when they're translated, you're also getting consistent translation. So it's a very useful way to reuse content at a very granular level. So all the reuse I've shown you so far is called managed reuse. What I mean by managed is that in order to do that kind of reuse, you have to create the components you want to reuse, and then you have to teach people to find and to reuse those components where they want to use that content. So that process sort of relies on management of the components and of the process. Quite a while ago, we discovered that people just don't do that very often or very well, and so we created a new kind of reuse which automates the reuse process, and we call that automated reuse. Now I'm just going to move over to my specifications, and in our editor here, Authorit is actually not storing this content the way you think it might. You can see the topic here, and it's all assembled with tables and images and paragraphs. But in the background, Authorit's actually disassembled all of that content and stores it as individual paragraphs. And it actually stores all the paragraphs in one master list. So by default, there is actually no duplication whatsoever in an Authorit database. As soon as you import or create content, when you go to save those topics, they are automatically consolidated, and only a single version of a particular paragraph is ever stored. And all of the topics that use it automatically link to it. Now that's something that would be too complicated for people to manage by themselves, which is why the system does it. But because we store content that way, it gives us the power to index it and expose it in a really novel way. So when a user starts typing in Authorit, the database is searched automatically, and this pop-up will then show me any content which is similar to what I've been typing. This is called Authorit Xtend. Now, when I'm in this mode, I can continue typing and Authorit will continue to refine that list, or I can use my arrow keys to just go down to look at the individual ones. Now you can see the information here shows that we've reused a component, how many places it's reused in. We can see what release states it is available in, and if it was translated, but also see a series of languages that it was available in. Now, this gives me a lot of really useful information to be able to make a good reuse decision. For example, with this one here, although it's less of a match, I can see it's reused 4 times and it's already in at least one place that is released. So it makes more sense for me to reuse this one rather than reuse this one with a number one. If I'm curious about where it's reused, I can simply hit my left arrow, and now I can see all of the individual topics where that is found. During this process, I might discover the entire topic I'm trying to write actually already exists. Or I might discover it doesn't, in which case I can just hit enter and that paragraph is automatically inserted into my topic. And that's what we call automated reuse. Now this automated or suggestive reuse called Authorit Xtend is a patented technology from Authorit, so you won't find that anywhere else. And it's incredibly useful when you're creating new content because it helps an author make a good reuse decision at the point that they're creating the content. No other technology allows you to save that time and right at the point of creation, because once the author's written the content, you're never going to recover that time. However, you've probably got lots of existing content that you've written before you had this. So how are you going to identify opportunities for reuse within your existing content? Well, Authorit Xtend's got a really neat feature for that too. In our options, we've defined a series of colors which allow us to identify different reuse, ranging from what we call a completely reused fragment, which is at this light orange, an exact match, which the same words in the same order, but there's a difference in punctuation, white space, or capitalization, a lot more common than you might think. And then varying degrees of match down to, I've got it defined to 85, but you can add as many as you want. Once you've defined those, you can turn on the highlighting, and Xtend automatically highlights paragraphs that fall into different categories of match. So if I move down to this topic here, we see some highlight, and if you remember the green meant that we had a match of 90 to 94%. I can now use a hotkey to bring up suggestions that are similar to this one from the database. Now we can see the only word that's different is actually the word teleporter. So in my paragraph it says your Acme teleportation backpack, and here it says your Acme teleporter. So we can see the two words there are different from a content that's already here and already released. So I can very simply take the one that's in the database and I have consolidated that content, meaning that I've got complete reuse. That will help me reduce costs in translation and localization, but also just generally improve the consistency of my content. Now we're going to take a look at creating content in Author. We're going to show you how to create topics, how to create and reuse graphics, and also how to create hyperlinks, and even look at some of the editing features. Now let's create a new topic. In Author, every topic is based on a template, and I'm going to go down and choose a type of template, which is a task. As you can see, you can have a variety of different kinds of templates in Author, and which ones you have will be very much dependent on how you set up your database, but you can have as many or as few as you like. Now I'm going to create a new task, which is going to be to install a new battery. Now I've just got some text in my clipboard, so I'm just going to paste that in here, and very quickly I can assign some basic paragraph level elements. Just going to assign some list, and there we are. I saved my topic and it's in my book. Now I'm just going to move it down quickly to where I want it, which will be underneath my battery types topic. And there we are. That's how you create a topic. Now that I've got my new topic, I want to add a hyperlink between this text here, which says conserving battery power, and this tips for trouble-free teleportation topic. So to create that, it's really simple. I simply highlight the text and then drag and drop the topic on top of it. And I can now create a link. Like topics, links are also based on types. Again, you can create as many different types of links as you want. In this case, I'm just going to do a regular jump type link. And Author creates that link for me. Now I want to add a graphic to one of my topics. I'm going to move across to my battery types topic here. And there's a variety of different ways I can add graphics. I can copy and paste graphics into the editor. I can create graphics from existing files that I've got. I could search for graphics using the search facility we used earlier and drag and drop them in, or I could also use this nice little thumbnails feature, which allows me to find the graphic I want and then quickly insert it into my topic. This is the one I want. And finally, let's take a look at the Authored editor. The Authored editor is designed specifically for component-based authoring. You've always got the contents of your document available to you on the left-hand side, which, even though you're working in components, you can easily move from one topic to the next or from the beginning to the end of the document. You have quite a simple yet powerful editor that lets you use features that you're accustomed to in word processing tools without having to deal with the complexity of XML and tags. So I've just finished showing you Author, which is really our interface for power authors or the more technical folks in your organization. But there are lots of users in the organization that aren't so technical and they're going to struggle to use an interface which is complicated or has lots of capability. So that's where Contribute comes in. Now this is a module specifically designed for your less technical folks that just come in occasionally into the product to contribute content. So let's take a look at that now. You can either launch it directly from here, or if you've been recently working on a document, you can click here on the edit button. Because Contribute is designed for the less technical folks in your organization, it's got a much simpler set of controls. You still have all of your topics aligned on the left-hand side, which allows quick navigation from one end of the document to the other. But the document is also arranged as a single scrolling document, so users will have a more familiar presentation. They can scroll down easily to where they want to work and then simply click on the block of content that they want to work on. Contribute then presents this very simple user interface that allows those individuals to quickly work in a similar way that they might do so in a wiki. In this case, all I want to do is make a small correction. I've noticed that DVD is outdated, so I'm just going to put in USB stick, and then I'm going to save. Now, I also at this point want to place this into review. So I'm going to move this topic directly into the review state, and now it's going to be ready for the next stage of our document workflow, which is review. So the first thing we're going to do is create a new review. And this is a very simple. We have to enter the people that they want to participate in the review. In this case, I'm going to invite myself. So you can set dates on when the review will begin and end. And you can also decide what kind of preview you want to have for this review. In this case, I'm going to create a PDF preview, and it's that simple. When a user is invited to participate in a review, they will receive an email, which they can just click on to launch review. Or if you're in the Author It portal, you can click on the review button to launch review. Review will show you all of the reviews in which you are a participant. In this case, I'm only a participant in one review, and I can see a very quick overview of where things are at with that review. I can also see on the left-hand side all of the topics that are in this book, and the ones that are actually in grey are not ready to be reviewed yet. So what Author It lets you do is start reviewing topics when the first one is ready, rather than having to wait for the entire document to be complete. And as topics are added to the review, then they will automatically appear in the review for people to work on, and those people will also receive notifications that new topics are ready. I can see that there are now 6 topics ready for me to start reviewing, and I'm going to start by having a look at this one. On my right hand side, you can see there's a PDF preview of the entire document, which I can scroll through and see what the entire document will look like when published. And in the middle here, I can see the text that I'm going to review. It's very easy for me to make a suggestion on there. I might look at this and say, you know what, that spec is wrong. That should actually be 150 now. I can leave a comment here and suggest that as a replacement. This process is completely collaborative. You can have any number of reviewers working simultaneously on the same topic at the same time, and their changes will actually appear instantaneously for each other. They can also reply, disagree, or agree with other people's comments, giving you a conversation on each particular suggestion. If you are an editor in a review, you could also accept or reject the suggestion right away without having to wait for the individual review to be complete. I'm going to agree with this. You can make a variety of different kinds of suggestions, including insertions, deletions, replacements, or comments. But once you've finished making your suggestions on a particular topic, you can simply mark that as complete. And if the minimum number of mandatory authors have completed their review on this topic, then it will automatically transition to the next state in the workflow. Now that all our topics are complete, we're ready to publish our book. Author It can publish to a variety of print, help, web, and learning formats, to desktop and mobile devices. In this case, we're going to publish this document to a PDF output. When you publish any book to any output in Author It, they'll be processed by a powerful array of publishing servers, and you've got your own personalized publishing queue where you can monitor progress. Now, most jobs will only take a few seconds, but if you do submit a particularly large one, you can monitor the progress right here. And once it's complete, you can open it quickly by viewing it in the View button or download the results to a zip file to your local computer. Now we're going to take a look at some of the outputs that Author It produces. First, let's take a look at Magellan. Magellan is a full Help Center based output that lets you deliver all of your content to your users as a single searchable help system. Magellan provides features not just for searching, but can also provide full menu structure, full table of contents, index, glossary, page by page or infinite scroll, and it even does automatic glossary term highlighting. Magellan is also completely adaptive and responsive and will adjust dynamically from desktop to tablet mode and right down to mobile mode. Now let's take a look at a couple of different PDF formats. Now Author It has a very powerful PDF engine that allows you to produce almost any kind of format you want. It's all based on CSS and XML. Here is just one example of a user manual type document, and it's got fully featured table of contents, headers, footers, chapter numbering, including section numbering. We've even got a multi-column glossary of terms, and of course, an index. Now we're going to have a look at another type of PDF document, which is a sales proposal type format. So again, this is PDF, but the formatting is completely different. It's been set up to look more like a sales proposal. So you have much fancier headers, and the layout and format of the document is more suited to a sales proposal. So you can see the real power of Author It when it comes to producing print and online outputs. Author It can also manage the translation and localization of your content. Let's open Localize. Localize is used to create different translations of the individual components in your database, managing the exporting of translation of those components with your translation vendors. This can save you a considerable amount of money because you're able to leverage the reuse of those components from your source documents across your translations. So now we're going to create a translation job that's going to allow us to export our source content for the Acme Teleportation Manual. In this case, I'm just going to choose a date that I want it all complete by, select an internal reference, and choose the languages. I'm going to have French, German, and Spanish. And then I just click Create. And Author automatically looks through all the data and will now create translation jobs for each one of those languages. And it's important that you create an individual translation job for each language because the actual source components that require translation may differ between them. Once the translation job is created, I can simply select the different jobs and download them. Then send them to my translation vendor where they'll be translated. Once the translator has returned one of your translation jobs, you can simply upload it by selecting the Upload button and then choosing the XML file that's been translated. Author will then automatically upload and import that content, verifying that all of the content is valid as it does so. When you switch back to Author, you can see that Localize has created a variant component for every language that we exported for each of the components that had translatable text. You've got to think of these as layers on the individual source components that are attached back to it. And this allows Author to track change over time so that in future we will only ever have to export the components where the source content has changed. Also, you'll see here that we don't necessarily want to work with all of these languages visible. So with this handy filter, we can show a specific language or we can just show the primary components. We can also apply a filter at the book level to switch to any of the other languages that we've got. So here we've now switched to German and I can walk through this document in German or in the pseudo-German translation that I've imported. I can now publish my German language book to any of the formats that I published my source language to without any need for any desktop publishing or reformatting. And this again saves huge amounts of money during your translation process. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this demo. Thanks for watching, and if you have any other questions, please visit our website at www.authrit.com or contact us on sales@authrit.com. Happy authoring!